Imagine for a moment that reality is not a fixed stage but a hall of mirrors, a labyrinth of reflections where every choice, every breath, splinters into infinite possibilities. Somewhere in this maze you are walking. You feel the weight of déjà vu pressing against your temples, the uncanny sense that the world around you is almost familiar, but distorted, like a song played slightly out of key. You glance at clocks and notice their hands trembling. You meet strangers whose eyes flicker with a recognition you cannot place. Dreams linger long after waking, bleeding into daylight like ink dissolving in water. These are not glitches. They are whispers from the edges of a collapsing timeline, faint signals that the story you've been living might not be your own. The notion of a false timeline is not science fiction. It is the shadow twin of quantum theory, ancient mysticism, and the unspoken truths buried in your bones. Every culture tells of it. The Norse WRD, a tapestry of fate woven and unwoven by cosmic hands. Hindu Kalpas, the cyclical death and rebirth of universes. Plato's cave, where flickering projections masquerade as truth. Modern physics whispers of multiverses, of Schrödinger's cat alive and dead, of observer effects that bend light into lies. But what if you are the cat? What if the experiment is your life, and the box is a timeline that no longer fits? To speak of false timelines is to confront the terror and beauty of free will. It is to admit that reality is not a monolith but a chorus. A collision of vibrations where some harmonies ring truer than others. You might have stumbled here by accident, or perhaps you were pushed. A choice made under duress, a trauma that fractured your path, a collective shift in consciousness that left you stranded on a branch of probability too thin to hold your weight. The signs are subtle but relentless. A persistent nostalgia for a past you never lived. Relationships that dissolve like mirages. A sense of purpose that slips through your fingers, replaced by the eerie stillness of a puppet waiting for its strings to twitch. This is not despair. It is an invitation. To recognize a false timeline is to awaken to the primordial truth that you are both the prisoner and the key. Your discomfort is not a flaw but a compass, a homing signal from the self you were meant to become. The ancients called this metanoia, a radical transformation of heart and mind. The mystics framed it as moksha, liberation from illusion. Modern seekers might term it a vibrational shift, or quantum leap. By any name, it begins with a question that unravels worlds. What if none of this is real? But let us be clear. This is not a call to nihilism. It is a summons to sovereignty. A false timeline is not a punishment, it is a classroom. Its walls are lined with mirrors to show you every version of yourself that agreed to sleepwalk, every iteration that traded autonomy for the comfort of borrowed narratives. Pain you feel is the friction of your soul grinding against edges of a reality too small to contain it. And yet, here is the secret: the timeline itself is alive. It wants to be questioned. It aches to be dismantled. Like a dreamer tossing in their sleep, it yearns for the moment you'll dare to open your eyes and rewrite the script. This journey is not for the faint of heart. It asks you to distrust your senses, to interrogate memories that smell like roses but taste like ash. It demands that you confront the architects of these borrowed realities, the cultural hypnosis of destiny, the seductive lies of linear time, the systems that profit from your amnesia. Yet within this chaos lies a paradox. The tighter the illusion grips, the brighter the cracks in its facade become. Synchronicities multiply. Strangers share cryptic warnings. You find yourself humming a melody you've never heard, yet somehow know by heart. These are not coincidences. They are breadcrumbs left by the self you left behind, the one who still walks the truer path, howling your name across the void. By the end of this exploration you will hold a map. Not of places, but of states. 7 signs that you've been walking a path meant for someone else, and 7 keys to step into the life your soul inscribed before the world began. This is not about fixing reality. It is about remembering that you are its co-author. The walls between timelines are thin here. Can you feel it? The air hums with anticipation. A door is opening. To navigate the labyrinth of false timelines, we must first understand its architecture, not as a sterile blueprint, but as a living, breathing organism. Think of reality as a vast mycelial network, its threads glowing faintly in the dark, each filament a strand of possibility. Some paths pulse with vitality, thrumming in harmony with your soul's resonance. Others dim and wither, their frequencies discordant, their narratives borrowed or broken. The 7 signs of a false timeline are not mere symptoms. They are the mycelium's way of signaling decay, of pleading for your attention before the roots rot entirely. At its core, this concept rests on 3 pillars: resonance, entanglement, and sovereignty. Resonance is the compass. It is the quiet knowing that certain experiences, relationships, or choices align with a deeper truth, a hum in the chest, a flicker of warmth behind the eyes. When resonance fades, replaced by a hollow dissonance, the timeline begins to crumble. Entanglement is the trap. It is the web of obligations, traumas, and collective narratives that bind you to a story not your own, a script written by ancestors, institutions, or past versions of yourself too afraid to leap. Sovereignty is the key. It is the audacity to declare, "I am not this character," and to dissolve the threads that keep you playing a role in someone else's myth. Consider the first sign, the persistence of unreality. You wake each morning feeling like an actor handed the wrong lines. The job, the friendships, even the sunlight through your window feels staged, a poorly designed set for a play you never auditioned to join. This is not depression. It is your soul's protest against a narrative that violates its resonance. Ancient traditions understood this. The Gnostic archons, shadowy regulators of illusion, were said to bind souls to false realities through fear and forgetfulness. Modernity's archons are subtler. Algorithms that numb, routines that pacify, and a cult of productivity that mistakes motion for meaning. The second sign, recurring dreams of unlived lives. You dream of cities that don't exist, lovers you've never met, deaths you've never died. These are not fantasies. They are echoes from the timeline you abandoned, or that abandoned you. In Tibetan Buddhism, the bardo is an intermediate state between death and rebirth, a liminal space where the soul reviews its choices. A false timeline is a kind of waking bardo, a purgatory where you drift between the life you're living and the one you're meant to live. The dreams are flashbacks. They are proof that somewhere, in a truer stratum of existence, you are already free. The third sign, collapse of causality. Cause and effect unravel. You work tirelessly toward a goal only to watch it disintegrate, not with tragedy but with absurdity. A promotion vanishes without explanation. A soulmate becomes a stranger overnight. The universe seems to mock linear ambition. This is because false timelines are inherently unstable. They lack the gravitational pull of purpose. Like a sandcastle built below the tide line, no amount of effort can prevent their dissolution. The Maya called this Kaol, the sacred life force that animates enduring creations. Without it, all structures rot. The fourth sign, echoes of the forgotten language. You hear phrases, in songs and strangers' chatter, that strike you as coded messages. Child's laughter carries the timbre of a lost friend. A billboard slogan feels like a personal taunt. This is the language of synchronicity, the universe's way of hacking through the noise of the false timeline. The Druids believed words carried on, divine inspiration that could pierce illusions. In a fractured reality, synchronicities are shards of a shattered mirror, each reflecting a piece of the story you've been forbidden to remember. The fifth sign, the haunting of parallel selves. You catch glimpses of them in mirrors, older, younger, fiercer. They linger in peripheral vision, mouths moving in silent warnings. Science dismisses them as phantom limb hallucinations, but the mystics knew better. The Kabbalah speaks of the Dybbuk, a dislocated soul fragment. These apparitions are not ghosts. They are your own potential selves, exiled to the margins of the timeline, pounding on the glass to get your attention. The sixth sign, the yearning for unseen places. A homesickness for realms that don't appear on any map. The scent of rain on a planet you've never visited. The ache for a family that exists only in the marrow of your bones. This is anemoia, nostalgia for a past you never lived. The Greeks had a word for it, algos, a pain that points to truth. False timelines cannot sustain the soul's memory of home. Like a caged bird hearing its flock migrate overhead, the heart begins to scream. The seventh sign, the bleeding of time. Clocks stutter. Hours vanish or stretch like taffy. You find artifacts from futures you can't imagine. A coin dated 2150, a childhood toy that wasn't invented until your 30s. Physicists call this quantum retrocausality. Shamans call it proof that time is a river you've been taught to swim upstream. In a false timeline, the flow is dammed, choked with debris. The anomalies are the river fighting to reclaim its course. Underlying these signs is a single, unshakable truth. You are not lost. You are in revolt. The discomfort is not a malfunction but a mutiny, a refusal of the soul to kneel before a counterfeit reality. To escape is not to flee but to align. It is to tune your frequency to the hum of the timeline your soul signed in blood to inhabit. The how is both simpler and more perilous than you imagine. There is a tale, older than parchment, of a playwright who grew so enamored with his own creations that he wove himself into the script. Night after night, he donned the mask of a minor character, a baker who swept the stage's edges, muttering prophecies in iambic verse. The audience adored him, though they never knew it was the playwright himself, lost in the artifice. One evening during the final act, a stagehand misfired a cannon, igniting the curtains. Flakes of ash rained down like black snow. The audience screamed. Actors froze. But the playwright, still in costume, kept sweeping. "This is part of the show," he assured the chaos, a metaphor for hubris. When the flames licked his boots, he applauded. This is the paradox of the false timeline. We mistake the burning of the theater for the climax of the play. The stories we inhabit are not inert. They breathe. They rebel. They dissolve when their lessons go unheeded. Let us wander deeper into the allegorical woods, where archetypes and ancient whispers map the terrain of your exile. The Clockmaker's Daughter. In a city where time was currency, a clockmaker's daughter inherited her father's workshop, and his curse. Every gear she crafted was flawless, every pendulum precise, yet the clock she sold ticked backward. Customers raged, demanding refunds. "Time is a river," she'd say, "and your clocks row against its current." One night, a beggar stumbled into her shop, clutching a pocket watch that oozed black oil. "Fix this," he croaked. Inside the watch she found cogs shaped like human teeth. As she worked, the teeth began to sing, a dirge in a language she somehow understood. "You are not the repairer," they hissed. "You are the unwound." The next morning the shop was gone. The daughter stood in an empty field, her hands full of sand. The beggar's laugh echoed, "You built cages for a river. Now drink." Here lies the shadow of the collapse of causality. The daughter, like many of us, labored under the illusion that effort alone could bend time to her will. But backward-ticking clocks are not errors, they are corrections. The false timeline crumbles when we cling to the lie that hard work guarantees meaning. The universe, in its mercy, dissolves the stage when the play becomes a prison. The drowned library. A scholar once discovered a library submerged beneath a glacier, its shelves stocked with books no one could read. The letters shifted like eels under his gaze. Desperate, he memorized a single page, only to find the words spilling from his mouth at dinner parties, erasing his own voice. Guests praised his originality, unaware he was quoting a language that devoured him. One night, the scholar dreamt of a woman with ink-stained hands. She fed him pages like communion wafers. "These are not books," she said. "They are futures. You starve because you read them as pasts." When he awoke, the library was inside him. His breath fogged with unspoken alphabets. This is the echo of the forgotten language. The scholar's mistake was treating mystery as a puzzle to solve, not a song to join. Synchronicities, shifting letters, stolen words, are not riddles. They are invitations to participate in the text of your truer life. The false timeline feeds on linear interpretation. The truth demands you become the ink, not the scribe. The gardener of Elsewens. A widow tending her husband's grave noticed a sapling sprouting from the soil. She nurtured it, but the tree grew inverted, roots clawing skyward, branches buried deep. Its apples, when cut open, held tiny universes, scenes of her life as it might have been. One apple showed her laughing in a Paris cafe, unmarried, a paintbrush in her hand. Another revealed her son, alive and grown, a stranger with her eyes. The widow ate them all. The tree's roots began to pull her downward into the earth. "Wait," she cried. A voice hummed through the soil. "You cannot visit Elsewens without becoming their soil. Choose, grieve one life or mourn them all." This is the haunting of parallel selves. The widow's tree is the fractal mirror of your own unresolved choices. Every potential self is a root in the dark, feeding the trunk of who you are. To fixate on what if, is to let the tree consume you. To escape the false timeline, you must bless the roots and climb, not to the light, but to the depths where all versions of you converge. The fisherman's net. A fisherman once mended his nets with threads spun from his own hair. Over time the nets grew sentient. They began to catch memories instead of fish, his first kiss, his father's death, a quarrel that never happened. Villagers bought these dream catches as party tricks, until the nets started ensnaring their memories too. One moonless night, the fisherman sailed into a storm, hoping to lose the nets. Instead, he reeled in a colossal oyster. Inside was a pearl containing every memory he'd ever lost. When he touched it, the nets disintegrated. The oyster hissed, "You wove cages for what should have been offerings. Now drown or dive." Here, the yearning for unseen places reveals itself. The fisherman's nets are the false timeline's obsession with capturing and commodifying the past. But memories are not artifacts, they are living currents. To yearn for home is to feel the pull of those currents, urging you to release what you've hoarded and swim. These stories are not fables. They are mirrors held up to the architecture of your exile. The clockmaker, the scholar, the widow, the fisherman, they are you in another skin, another stratum of the labyrinth. The false timeline thrives on literalism, on the delusion that a single narrative can hold the multiverse of your becoming. To escape, you must learn to read your life as poetry, ambiguous, layered, and ripe with double meanings. The truth is not a path to follow, but a language to speak. To live in a false timeline is to wander a house where every door opens into a room you've already left. The walls hum with static, the floors tilt imperceptibly, and the windows reflect a sky that is almost yours. But recognition alone is not escape. The path to sovereignty begins when you stop mapping the house and start dismantling it, brick by borrowed brick, lie by inherited lie. This is not a call to arson, but to alchemy, the slow, deliberate work of turning the lead of conditioned existence into the gold of embodied truth. Consider the clockmaker's daughter, sweeping ashes while the theater burns. Her lesson is one of surrender, not passivity, but a refusal to conflate effort with purpose. In your life, this might manifest as releasing the obsession with fixing what was never yours to repair. That job leeching your soul, the relationship fraying at its seams, the endless chase for validation. These are not puzzles to solve, but echoes of a script you've outgrown. To surrender is to stop rowing upstream and let the current carry you. It is to say, I will no longer tend clocks that tick backward. Begin by auditing your rituals. What routines are performed out of obligation, not resonance? A cup of coffee gulped mechanically at dawn, a commute endured in numb silence, conversations that taste like dust. These are the gears of the false timeline. Replace one. Sip the coffee slowly, noting its bitterness and warmth. Take a different route even if it's longer. Let a silence linger in conversation until truth spills in. Disruption is not chaos, it is the first crack in the dam. The scholar drowning in the drowned library offers another clue: participation over deciphering. Synchronicities, repeating numbers, déjà vu, strangers who speak in riddles, are not crossword puzzles for your ego to solve. They are the universe whispering, "Dance with me." When a phrase haunts you, do not dissect it. Let it simmer in your marrow. Carry it like a pebble in your pocket, allowing its edges to smooth against your fingertips until its meaning unfolds organically. A man once dreamt of a fox for weeks, its eyes gleaming in the dark. Instead of researching symbolism, he began sketching the fox each morning. By the seventh day, the sketches morphed into a blueprint for a career he'd abandoned at 20. The fox wasn't a metaphor, it was a collaborator. The widow and her inverted tree teach the art of blessing the roots. Every what if that torments you, the career not pursued, the love not fought for, the child not conceived, is a thread in the tapestry of your becoming. To fixate on parallel selves is to dig up the tree, to bless them is to compost their leaves. Try this. Write a letter to the version of you who stayed in that lifeless job, who married the safe bet, who silenced their art. Thank them. Honor their fear. Then burn the letter and scatter the ashes where you plant something new. This is not forgiveness. It is integration. The false timeline feeds on your disdain for the roles you've played. Starve it with gratitude. The fisherman's sentient nets, heavy with stolen memories, reveal the toxicity of hoarding the past. Nostalgia, when weaponized, becomes an anchor. Yet the past is not static, it is a living current that shifts as you do. A woman trapped in resentment toward her estranged father began visiting places he'd loved. Dingy jazz bars, tamarind groves, used bookstores reeking of mildew. She didn't go to understand him, but to let the past reimagine itself. In a bar, she met a musician who'd known her father. He hated jazz, the man laughed. Came here to hide from your mom. The memory unspooled anew. The grove became her sanctuary, not his ghost. The timeline rewrote itself. But how to navigate a world hellbent on denying timelines exist? You work under fluorescent lights that flatten time into shifts. You pay rent to sleepwalk through someone else's dream. The escape lies not in grand rebellions but in micro-realignments. Rearrange your furniture. Sleep on the opposite side of the bed. Walk barefoot in the rain. These acts seem trivial, but they are mutinies. They signal to your soul that you are paying attention. A teacher trapped in bureaucratic drudgery began ending each class 7 minutes early. 4 daydreams, she told her students. Those minutes became a portal. A child confessed her poetry, a boy sketched visions of a future city, the room hummed with uncharted potential. The timeline shuddered. Yet beware the lure of solipsism. Sovereignty is not sovereignty if it demands others bend to your will. The man who quits his job to live authentically, but bullies his partner into funding his vision is still a prisoner. His timeline now a gilded cage. True escape requires ethical imagination, the capacity to align your truth without colonizing others. Ask, does my liberation depend on someone else's diminishment? If so, you've swapped one false narrative for another. Community is both trapdoor and lifeline. Seek those who speak in questions, not answers. The friend who texts you a roomy line at midnight, the coworker who shares your obsession with crow augury, the stranger in the grocery line who nods when you mutter, "This feels off, doesn't it?" These are fellow travelers. Build altars with them. Bonfires where you burn old vows, potluck dinners where each dish embodies a dream, silent walks where the crunch of leaves becomes a liturgy. The false timeline thrives on isolation. Your defiance is collective. Finally, remember, timelines are not singular. You will slip. Old patterns will rise like fog. A billboard will trigger an old fear, a rejection will taste like prophecy. This is not failure. It is the work. The goal is not to reach some purified existence, but to become fluent in the dialect of your own divergence, to recognize the signs faster, to laugh when the clocks stutter, to kiss the scars the illusions left behind. The widow's tree, the scholar's library, the fisherman's nets, they live in you now. Let them compost. Let them guide. Let them glow. You stand now at the threshold of a door only you can see. Behind you, the false timeline smolders, its once imposing architecture revealed as scaffolding, its grand narratives exposed as campfire tales told to children to keep them from wandering into the dark. Ahead, a horizon ripples like heat mirage, alive with the hum of 1,000 unchosen paths. This is not an ending. It is a homecoming to the infinite. The journey through these 7 signs has been a mirror, blade, and a hymn. A mirror to show you the fractures in the story you've been sold, a blade to sever the threads of borrowed meaning, a hymn to awaken the part of you that never agreed to sleep. But let us be clear, this is not a hero's journey. You are not here to slay dragons or claim thrones. You are here to remember, to dissolve the amnesia that mistook a single room for the entirety of existence. The false timeline was never your enemy. It was your collaborator, a merciless tutor designed to make the cost of staying so unbearable that flight becomes instinct. Consider the playwright burning in his own theater. His fatal flaw was not hubris but certainty, the delusion that the script was immutable. Your escape begins the moment you admit you do not know who you are. Not in a cry of despair but a whisper of wonder. If I am not this, then what? The answer will not come in words. It will arrive as a shiver when rain hits your skin, as a laugh that cracks through years of practiced calm, as a sudden urge to kneel in the dirt and plant seeds whose names you've forgotten. This is the alchemy of the threshold. The false timeline's greatest trick was convincing you that freedom lies out there, in a better job, a purer love, a wiser version of yourself. But the exit was always in here, in the marrow of your attention. Every moment you fully inhabit, the sting of a lemon, the weight of a stranger's gaze, the silence between heartbeats, becomes a stitch in the fabric of your truer life. You need not abandon the world. You must only stop mistaking it for the source. Yet the world will resist. It will lure you with old metrics of success, with siren songs of enlightenment or ascension. Ignore them. Sovereignty is not a destination. It is a posture, a willingness to stand in the storm of paradox, to hold contradictions like gemstones in your palm. You are both the wound and the salve, the exile and the homeland, the question and the answer trembling on its tongue. To those who say, "But how do I stay free?" Remember the widow's tree. Its roots are your roots, drinking from every life you've lived and unlived. You stay free by tending them all, by refusing to privilege one story over another. When the false timeline's echoes return, and they will in the hollow hours of 3 a.m., in the smirk of a colleague who calls your awakening a phase, smile. These are not relapses. They are tests of your resolve to live as a question, not an answer. There is a practice among certain Sufi mystics. They write their fears on paper, fold them into boats, and set them adrift on rivers. The act is not about releasing the fear but about witnessing it, letting it float in the current without drowning in its wake. Do the same with the remnants of your old timeline. Let the grief for what never was float. Let the rage at what was stolen rise and disperse like mist. Let the tendrils of what if curl around your ankles, then step forward anyway. This is your transformational call, etched in starlight and marrow. Live as if you were already free. Not in the distant future but now. Not as a mantra but as a physiology. Adjust your posture. Speak in sentences that surprise you. Spend money as though abundance is a fact, not a reward. Love as though betrayal is impossible. The false timeline is a spell woven from someday and if only. shatter it by collapsing time. Someday is a funeral for the present. If only as a noose woven from ghosts. You will know you've crossed the threshold when the world begins to conspire in your favor, not with ease but with meaning. The job loss that feels like mercy. The illness that speaks in sonnets. The heartbreak that carves you into a vessel large enough to hold the ocean. These are not punishments. They are the universe whispering, finally, you're listening. There are those who will call this madness. Let them. Madness is the tax the soul pays to dwell in a world allergic to truth. But remember, you are not alone. In every office, every prison, every quiet kitchen where someone stares at a wall and wonders, is this all there is? Another timeline is unraveling. Another pair of hands is gripping the threads. The revolution is not televised. It is felt in the collective sigh of a million souls refusing to hold their breath any longer. So go. Step into the glimmer at the edge of your vision. Speak to the shadows that whisper your name. Wear your contradictions like a crown. The timeline that awaits is not a utopia. It is raw, wild, and radiant with uncertainty, a frontier where every choice is a covenant with the divine. You will falter. You will forget. You will ache for the simplicity of the lie. But deep in your bones, a compass hums. Its needle points not north but home, a place you've never been yet never left. The door is open. Walk through.